Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA podcast. We've got Neil McManus and Ursula Jacob with myself and Rory to look ahead to the Hurling League finals. And I don't know, Rory, if you get a sense of this, that just like the buzz, the anticipation of it is the first weekend of the Hurling Football Championship, but a sold out Páirc Uí Chaoimh feels like it's almost an anomaly in the middle of it all, where there feels like there's an awful lot of people talking about the hurling this weekend as well. It's gas, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's, look, we saw last week how the football leagues petered out to almost a non-event right across all 4 games. There was elements of disappointment attached to all of them, whereas I think there's a massive sense of marquee, a massive sense of occasion. It is almost the perfect precursor to what now looks like a fully sold out Munster Championship. I mean, the Munster Council, must be... And I know there's controversy as well, by the way, and I don't know if we want to get into it about the rising of the ticket prices up to €35. I think it's still, I know we live in straitened times. I still think that's very good value, by the way. I just would only hope, and in fairness to the Cork County Board, I can't really speak. And I know Limerick as well. Limerick have made great strides on their match day event presentation. I think you got to up that. If you're going to up your prices, you've got to probably put a little bit more effort into what you're offering the punter as they're coming through the turnstiles. And, it can't just be the Barrack Street Band banging out the anthem 5 minutes before the game starts. You've got to put a small little bit more of an effort into it. But I think this Sunday, a sold out Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the pitch looked a little ropey actually last night. Now I don't know whether or not it was the camera, and they might have maybe laid some sand on it just to sort of harden it up again, or what. But it's nearly always in immaculate condition. It's a fantastic opportunity for all 4 teams to play and get a really good prep ahead of the championship. Silverware on the line for both teams. Cork is, as we know, and it doesn't take much for the hype machine to kick into overdrive. And look, I know that's something that is thrown at Cork people, but Jacqui, you and I know that's something that's thrown at Cork people since we were children, and probably long before that. It's not a new thing, and it's something that Cork people generally tend to embrace, and there probably will be the guts of 35,000-40,000 Cork people there on Sunday as well. And look, they do bring something different to in a hurling context. There is a little bit of a phenomenon around it. I know people are saying there's bandwagons, but sure, look, there's loads of room on a bandwagon. I'll be up the front driving, but there's plenty of room, and there's plenty of room for more to join. And I think it's just it's a great way to begin what we hope is going to be a fantastic summer of hurling.
Yeah, because let's not forget, Neil, yes, everybody talks about the famine in Cork. They haven't won an All-Ireland since 2005. They haven't won a league since 1998. But Tip haven't won a league since 2008 either. So I do think there's 2 teams where there's a driving hunger to actually want to put some silverware on the table and move forward. And I do think that genuinely adds to the novelty of this. And that is why they care.
It is. Partly, but I have to agree with Rory. It is massively driven by Cork. Tipperary have done a fantastic job at sitting in the background and just letting us all be about Cork. Even Alan Connolly's piece in the print was earlier in the week. He was saying that everybody's trying to win every sprint at training. That just gives you a little snippet into the insight and the intensity for places there are within that Cork panel. It's a little bit different for Tipperary. Their season being so, underwhelming last year has allowed them to be under the radar for most of this league campaign. They've brought in the 4 or 5 under-20s from last year. They've gelled lovely. Obviously, Darren McCarthy's really played a very, I'm not going to say a leadership role, but he's been a big part of that Tip attack so far this year. But it's set up really nicely for Tip to come in and spoil the party. I don't know that they'll be able to do it. There's so much momentum behind Cork now at the moment. They look forward to these big nights in the park. There's no 2 ways about it. And whenever we get into talking about the game, they just have so many different match winners all over the field. their midfield and their forward line is absolutely ferocious. I know they might be down, Brian, but look, they've got 3 or 4 lads who can step straight in there and offer you something different. But it's brilliant, actually. Like, look at the difference that Cork have made to the overall GAA attendances for hurling this year. They're a massive part of the association. They brighten the thing up.
But sorry, Neil, apologies to cut across you. Cork saved the GAA's hide last year. I think sometimes people tend to forget that in terms of the crowds that were brought. I don't ever remember an All-Ireland hurling semi-final selling out completely. Dublin exited the championship at quarter-final stage, which is the other big supporting fraternity. The attendances in a football sense had fallen off a cliff because we know what happened to football. Without Cork's contribution from right through the Munster Championship, right into quarter-final, semi-final, even the day below in Offaly, the books at the end of the year might have taken a very, very different complexion from a GAA perspective. So it isn't just hurling that they're making this contribution towards. Sorry, Neil, apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. They're making the contribution, but it is their hurling team that are making that contribution.
That's true. Sorry.
So they're playing a huge role within the association, and they're going absolutely nowhere. I was looking at their panel, last night for a couple of the under-20s. We've all heard of Dermot Healy this year. There's a couple that we're going to see, I think, actually in the Munster Championship potentially as well, that haven't really seen much game time during the league, and they're such an exciting prospect. I'm not going to say they're going to be the next Limerick or the next Kilkenny who are going to dominate for a period of time. They have to go and really win one to have that feather in their cap. But they bring so much colour, so much excitement. Everybody's trying to get a ticket to see them in the Munster Championship at some stage this year, and like, it's great to have them back going in this kind of run of form, because they're so exciting to watch, and they do bring a huge support to every game.
I think it's those new characters, Ursula, that are the ones driving it. Like Neil mentions Alan Connolly, just the refreshing nature of reading his comments during the week about, the way that they're driving each other in training, him talking about his own underage career, that he wasn't known for scoring goals. You look at him scoring them for fun now, and just being so refreshingly honest about it, because he knows there's such a hunger for this team to actually want to do something together. And I love that they're so open about that, because it's hard to balance we haven't won anything with everybody thinks we're going to be superstars.
Yeah, and I think Cork have got that the perfect mix now between the youth, the experience, and we speak about Alan Connolly, but listening to Patrick Horgan after the game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I just found that he was a breath of fresh air. He doesn't seem to get, bothered by pressure or hype or, stats about himself. Like, I love how open and honest he was. Like, he's realistic enough to know that, like, yes, they're flying, all cylinders at the moment, but they need to back it up now with silverware. They need to back it up with winning a title. And there's pressure with that too, but I do think this Cork team are embracing that pressure. They seem to thrive out of the attention on him now. I think they've built up that consistency that maybe was missing in previous years. And I think there's that ruthless streak that probably makes them an extra dangerous team now, because they're not just, getting high scores, but it's going for the goals, maybe when the goals are not even on. And I think that's maybe the difference with some of these young guys that have come in, that when you're a young player and you're coming into a setup, there's a fearlessness there. You maybe don't have any hang-ups about, playing against some of a more experienced team. You're kind of maybe naive in some ways, but I think that can bring an excitement to a team. And I think that's why Cork have got the perfect blend now between the youth of the Alan Connollys and the Dermot Healys, but then you've got the guys like the Seamus Harnedys and the Patrick Horgans, who still seem to be in like peak condition and are contributing so much to this team. So I think that's where Cork have the most strength with that blend.
Is there a danger, Neil, though, that they're over-talked and overhyped for a team that, still need to actually deliver that? It does, even everywhere I go, it seems everybody is doing that. And they're making the point that Ursula's making. Yes, they're grounded. Yes, they're humble. Yes, they're doing all the right things, but they kind of have to be.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what is their area of weakness. Their forward line is so strong. That group, they have 10 who on any given day could be starting 10 forwards. Midfield very strong as well, but it's their back line where they don't have that depth of cover. Whenever Owen Downey was out, Jeremy Elric was out, they don't have like for like replacements there. You know, we've seen Tommy O'Connell come in and play wing back at one stage. Mihaw's done a good job. He's fresh in. I think that's their one area that they actually need to develop a couple of extra players to give them that depth there, because if you lose a Rob Downey, you lose Kieran Joyce, I don't think the like for like replacements are there in the way that it has been for Limerick. It's been one in, one out over the last number of years without any detrimental impact to the team. We've seen Limerick just play All-Ireland finals without Cian Lynch, without Declan Hannon. Performance level exactly the same. And the one thing I would say about Cork, I've heard it a few times this week, are they going too well too early? I don't think so, because Championship is 2 weeks away. So, you know, we're 2 weeks out from Championship. This is a great time to be going well. And if the competition for places is as intense as we think it is, as what Alan Conley's article would infer that it is, it's the one thing that drives teams, because Limerick have won the league and went on and won the All-Ireland. Kilkenny and their pump were doing the exact same thing. If that competition and that intensity for spots and team is at that level, there shouldn't be a decline in performance at any stage this year.
I think that's exactly the way Pat Ryan will be painting this, Rory, because he'll say, we've driven on the back of success. We've seen other teams doing it. There's no need to take the foot off the pedal at any stage, because it can be over very quickly. And that's the problem with the Munster Championship. If you decide, okay, yeah, listen, we're going too hard too early, you can be out of the Munster Championship. And Cork teams have known that over the last few years. He can't do that. He's actually saying, let's go foot to the floor here.
Less than 12 months ago, Jacqui, there was idiots out there saying Pat should lose his job. It's all changed very, very quickly. Now, that's the nature of sliding doors moments in sport, and it can happen. Obviously, that famous night in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Limerick, that was the moment. And there was a huge element of luck attached to that. That was a brave call by Sean Stack to call for that penalty, where it was a denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity. He doesn't do that, and who knows where Pat Ryan is, who knows where Cork Hurling is now, who knows where the story is. They would have exited the All-Ireland at the group stages. There would have been no journey and no pilgrimage to an All-Ireland final and all the epic games we saw in between, and then everything changes. So it has flipped on its head. It is definitely bolstered by a panel of players that has a huge amount of depth in it now. Neil outlined it there, particularly up front. They're playing an absolutely traditional, in some ways, but classic Cork hurling. They're brilliant to watch. They are brilliant to watch. There's nobody can convince me that they're not good to watch. So that's why you have all these crowds. That's why you have all this razzmatazz around them. That's why there's 45,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday. And there's a bit of personality and there's a bit of character about the team. But they haven't delivered anything yet. And that question mark still hangs over them. And they know that too.
Yeah. Let's talk about Tip then, Ursula, because I do think they do feel like they're I don't know, I think Neil is right. They're sort of like secondary in all of this, which I think is wild, because to me, they've been the form team in the league. I think what they have done in the space of a year is actually incredible, because yes, Rory's right. Cork could have easily found themselves not in the Championship and not had the journey and everything that went with it. But Tipperary actually had that. They went into the doldrums. Everybody said it was over. There was nobody turning out to watch them. And look at them now. And I think the brand of hurling that they're playing is worth watching as well. And I think the development that they're on is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think Tip will be fairly happy that this week and in the last couple of weeks, all the talk is obviously about Cork, and Tip are quietly working away in the background. And Liam Cahill and his management team are going to be really, really thrilled with how they've progressed throughout this league. You know, they are the only team that have beaten Cork this year, remember, as well. And that night up in Thurles, they showed a greater hunger, a greater desire. Their work rate was immense, their turnovers. Some of the guys, as Neil mentioned, Darren McCarthy that night shone through. He was lethal in that inside forward line. So Tip have, developed their team, their panel as well. They've injected those younger guys into it. And I think that's kind of added a freshness too. Even I would have seen Jake Morris, his role has developed in this team as well. I really like his role that he plays along that half forward line. And I think that's going to be a really, really crucial line on Sunday, because Alan Tynan himself and Gerard O'Connor, they can cause havoc on that half forward line if they get going in this game. Now, obviously, they're coming up against an extremely strong half back line, but Liam Cahill will be quietly confident going into this game, because they, as I said, they've stood up at certain stages in this league when maybe in other years they might have died down, and they'll be very, very disappointed with how last year went. The pride that they would bring to the Tip jersey, that wasn't there. Yep. They know the annihilation they suffered at the hands of Cork last year, 18 points. So they have a point to prove as well, and it'll really give them an idea where they are and where they are going in against Limerick in the opening round of the championship. And they're not going to be holding back one bit, because they're craving this success as well. They're craving the silverware, and the Munster Championship hasn't been really favourable towards them as well. And they'll know that last year it didn't do Clare any harm winning the league title. So I think they're going to be going all out on Sunday. And what better place than down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Cork? Yeah, big time. Because I think the start of the Munster Championship that they're facing into, Neil, as well, these next few weeks, this is really, really, really crucial times for Tipperary hurling. If they are going to stand up and do the things that Ursula is talking about, these next 3-4 weeks are going to determine their whole season.
Yeah, it's from one fire to the next. There's no two ways about it. And they will be the happiest team in the league so far, simply because of the renaissance that they have produced. But they are at a different stage in their development. I think it is only fair that we point that out. This Cork team are really unlucky a couple of years back not to get out of the group, and whenever they did get out, their quality has just shone through. So this Tipperary team, they're still in the process of embedding that younger group of players into their starting positions in the team. Now, they have a phenomenal spine, they really do, but they need to develop that a little bit. I do think their backline has to improve as well. I know they've been conceding high scores as well as putting them on the board themselves, and Cork are rampant in that fashion. So Tipperary have done a fantastic job. The team itself is the epitome of Liam Cahill himself. You look, and Ursula is bang on. I think loads of it is down to that half forward line. Jake Morris definitely leading things there. Alan Tynan and Gerard O'Connor, they're two ball-winning machines, really, and it's a leaf straight out of the Cork book. Actually, they have this big, strong, aggressive half-forward line who are giving them a foothold in teams. They have a lovely mixture of pace and strength, and a little bit of experience to come in whenever they do bring Nolan or they bring John, and they add a lovely they add a lovely bit of experience into the forward line. This is a massive challenge for them. Let's not be under any illusions. It's a huge challenge for especially this Tipperary defence to deal with the Cork pace. And as Rory alluded to, whoever the three are, say it's Jack O'Connor, it's Kingston, and I don't know if we'll see Brian Hayes or not, depending on who comes off the bench.
Robbie O'Flynn apparently is going really well.
Three lads come in off the bench after you have been trying to tag the starting Cork six forwards for the first 55 minutes. That's an unenviable task. But I think the battle might actually be won in midfield as well. So Willie Connors and Craig Morgan, I think that's Liam Cahill's preferred two in the middle. But they're going up against Dara Fitz and Tim O'Mahony, who have been in unbelievable form. So that Cork, you think Tim O'Mahony has developed into almost the type of player that William O'Donoghue is for Limerick in the middle of the field, allowing Dara Fitz to exploit all the spaces. What a partnership of silk and steel that is. if Tipperary can get a handle on those two, I actually think it gives them a chance to be in the game and make it really competitive. But that's one hell of an ask for those two lads in the middle of the field for Tipperary.
Do I get the sense you're both leaning towards Cork and Ursula?
Yeah, I think it is hard to look past Cork. I think, and I know it's been spoken about so much, but I think their attack and their goal threat is going to be something that's going to be hard to stop on Sunday. I'd be worried a little bit about Tip defensively with their pace. I think they're very strong going forward, but I'd be worried that when the likes of the Cork players take them on and go for that goal, I think that's where Tip might be under a little bit of pressure. And I think we are going to see goals on Sunday. Like, if this is going to be a shootout, and if this is going to be who can score the most, goals or whatever, like, there's no competing with Cork on that. As I said, they don't take the easy option now. They go for it. Even if they have half a chance, they will go for it. And they'll be told that on Sunday as well. And as Neil has said, any of the guys that come in as well, they'll be ready to inject that further bit of pace. And that's where I would worry for Tipperary a little bit on Sunday, their pace at the back.
You feel the same, Neil, yeah?
I couldn't have said it any better. I'm totally aligned with that. Especially in Cork, in the park, they are making that, a serious obstacle for anybody to come and do well there. They're loving the night. The community and the Cork public are with them. And I think Tipperary will work really, really hard to be in this game in the last 10 minutes. And that's no slight on Tipperary or the development that they've come through as a group. But Cork are going that well.
Wait till Shane McGrath hears this podcast, lads. He'll be up in arms for you. Come here. One last thing that I wanted to ask you about on this game before we move on to the other is, I did read Pat Ryan's comments, Rory, saying that a referee really needs to be 100% before sending somebody off. And it does feel like it is the narrative that has followed this hurling season so far. And I think it's going to dip into the championship too, with all these head-high contact, with the situation. Now, Sean Stack is refereeing again on Sunday. We know the way he likes to referee, a good referee who will let people play. I do just wonder, though, when managers are feeling the need to come out and say you need to be 100% before you send somebody off, the pressure is going to come on referees to be like, how do I decide what's 100% call? How do I do this? I know we've chatted about it loads on the pod, but what you'd hate to have is a league final scenario where there's a 50-50 call, a referee gets it wrong and everybody's up in arms over it, because we have had that a lot in the league already.
And you run the risk now if you get sent off, particularly at the weekend, for either of the four teams have been suspended for a major championship match, which no teams can really afford, given the nature of combat in both provincial championships, whereby you're playing such a congested number of games into a short period of time, and you're obviously going to need a big panel because you're going to pick up injuries. You might pick up the odd suspension. You might have issues whereby not all your personnel are going to be available to you at any one given time. I think in relation to the head high stuff, I have no problem with erring on the side of caution, even if it's a mistake. It needs to be clamped out. I will be unequivocal on that. The nature of a head high, shoulder, elbow to the head, it's just intolerable. You can't allow a situation, let's get a bit more wishy-washy with the rules just in case a fella doesn't nail someone with a shoulder or an elbow to the head. No, like they have to have a zero tolerance approach to that particular infraction. Now, having a zero tolerance approach means you could potentially make mistakes. Sean Stack, I think personally, actually, is a fantastic referee, right? But I don't see, like the whole issue around, I know Jacqui Tyrrell has often mentioned about VAR and all of that. It's not the most practical thing because your coverage at games, etc., is going to be tricky. I don't even know how that would work in a practical sense. It could, like, unless you maybe brought it in from Croke Park onwards or from provincial finals, which is a bit odd. So you have the competition maybe played under two different rules. In a practical sense, it's not really helpful. Where I would probably look for maybe a little bit more help is, and less pressure, take his time. If there's a major incident, don't rush. And in fairness, most of them do. Don't rush to judgment. If it means you have to run from one side of the field to the other, or call your umpires or your linesmen or touch judges or whatever they're called now, you call them in and you have a conversation about it and see who saw the best angle of what I'm about to adjudicate on. If it even means consulting with your umpires or the fourth official, there's another official who's sat there watching the game as well. Use all of the officialdom knowledge at your disposal and make the best informed decision. And if it means it takes an extra minute, it takes a minute to sort that out. It's such a key decision. I don't really have a problem with that. Now, a lot of the time it's going to be obvious if somebody does something really bad anyway, so he might be able to make the decision more quickly. But if it's a contentious one, I don't really see a problem with taking an extra 30, 40 seconds to a minute to figure it out and just add the time on at the end. Am I missing something there?
No, I don't think you're missing something, but I do think, like, let's say, Neil, right? You're involved in coaching now, right? When you're at training on a Tuesday night and you're saying, okay, you have to back off this challenge because you might get a red card. Like what I've heard people talking about is punishing intent, because even if you don't hit somebody, but actually if you're in training and in the hot melt of battle, you're saying to somebody, go in and you're trying to lay down a marker. How do you stop that? Because we're talking milliseconds here.
You can't. And so I agree with Rory on the point about encouraging the referee to consult with his officials and come to a decision, with maybe 1, 2, 3 points of view. Where I think differently than Rory, as Rory said, a shoulder or an elbow. I think that's a big difference. So if I'm trying to hit Rory with a shoulder, but I catch him with a high elbow, they're two different things. And I don't think you should be sent off for. Let me say, if your intent is reckless, that to me is more with the hurl. We all know if somebody's trying to hit somebody with a hurl, then that, there's intent on injury there, and that needs to be a red card. If I'm trying to hit Rory with a shoulder fairly and I mistime it, if I hit him and I hurt him, yes, red card. If I mistime it and I like we've seen it last week, where was James Mahon gets sent off, and he didn't make contact, and it wasn't. Then there definitely wasn't dangerous intent, and we can't have people sent off for that. I want this league final to be full blooded. Like, the players at this level are not intending injuring each other. They're intending, these bringing the best of their athletic ability and their physicality onto the field and making this the spectacle that we love. We love that hurling is full blooded. That's why hurling is the best cultural representation that we have of our nation. We're full-blooded people. We're a passionate people. We have to allow the lads the ability to tackle with their body. If it's dangerous and somebody gets hurt, then that's the time to act. It's so hard to measure intent. Jacqui, your thought on what Ursula's intention was in that tackle and my thought on what Ursula's intention was in that tackle are two different things. But if Ursula shouldered you in the head, then that happened and we can deal with that.
Don't worry, Jacqui, I won't do it.
Yeah. She's tried it before.
She has track record, Jacqui. But look, it's so hard. I think we give the referees the space they need, or else we say we allow the referees to come out and say, here is the decree that has been given to me, and everybody then is understanding of that before they go into the matches. But let's not ruin this. This final. It's so eagerly anticipated because we know that Tip are going to be having to live on the edge here to work with Cork. Cork do play on that edge anyway. We spoke about Tim O'Mahony already, and what a wonderful sight it is to see him bringing that level of intensity and physicality to the Cork midfield. So I'd like to see as many players staying on the pitch at all time. I'd like to see the game played in as physical a way as possible. If something is dangerous and someone does make contact with the head, like we've seen the Conor Cooney incident a few weeks ago, in the Limerick Galway game, and that should have been a red card. But the vast majority of the others, I would think, it's a yellow card and it's a warning, and that's how we want hurling to be played.
Yeah.
I do like that bunker review system, Jacqui, in rugby. You know, that like it speeds the game up. It takes the pressure off the referee to make a decision too quickly and too hastily. Then somebody can kind of take a more measured approach. Now, look, obviously we're heading back into TMO situation, but he can take a more measured approach in a more relaxed environment where he can study whatever video footage is available to him, and then after 10 minutes make his decision to the referee known, and the referee then just adjudicates on the field after that.
Yeah, I like that too. But you do still have, like, let's say Ursula with James Mahon this weekend, that suspension doesn't get overturned. So somebody has looked at that after the fact and said, actually, yep, that's still a red.
Yeah, and if you look at that, you know, Sean Stack obviously was linesman that day, and he did consult with the ref. So I think there does need to be further supports there for the referees. I think referees are in a no-win situation regardless of stuff. I would be in favour of something along the lines of the video technology. I'd rather the extra minute to actually look at the play again, rather than making a quick, you know, rash decision and then a player gets sent off. I also hope that we're going to be talking about on Sunday night and Monday morning and next week about the quality of the two games, and not the criticism of referees and a decision that changed the game, because I think we seem to be getting so consumed by that in certain ways that we're forgetting that there's actually some brilliant games happening. So I'm just hoping that we are going to be discussing the hurling for the right reasons on Sunday night and Monday and into next week. But I definitely will be fully in favour of like more supports for refs, not just the sideline officials or the umpires, because us sometimes when we're working up in the Sunday game in the studios and looking at replays, you know, sometimes it's hard to make a decision there and then, and we've got the supports of technology. So how do you make a split decision and always get it right in the heat of Munster Championship, Leinster Championship, or whatever?
In the fastest game, the fastest field sport in the world.
I do think sometimes referees are left to hang out, you know, dry on their own, and they get so much criticism. I do think there has to be greater supports there, and I will be in favour of something like video technology, even if it does mean that there's a couple of stoppages in the game. I'd rather the calls be made are correct ones.
I'm 100% with you. Yeah. Okay, look, hopefully we're not coming back to that again on Monday. Let's finish off on Offaly Waterford then, just even on that game that we're just chatting about. Not having James Mahon is disappointing, but I do think for Offaly Waterford, I should say, I think Rory alluded to this earlier, Neil, even for the four teams to get a run out in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in a big game like this, I'm sure a lot of people might have said Waterford will potentially be in a final early doors, but I think we've chatted about Offaly enough on this podcast to know that they are the force that is coming. They have brought so much to this league already. Imagine the colour that they are going to bring to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday. I know there's been a scramble for tickets and we're all talking about Cork, but the Offaly picture that is being painted this season is going to see another level on Sunday as well, I think. It
is. And there's excitement around Offaly, but actually you bring up a really good point, Jacqui, that I'd like to just jump in on at a different angle, because, you know, going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, what an experience for the Offaly lads as well, who haven't been involved in as many big games over the last 5-6 years. But, you know, there were 5 hurling league finals this year every year, and we obviously know, we had Joe Baldwin, Trevor Hilliard, and Ronan Sheehan all saying that the finals weren't being treated with the respect they need. What an opportunity now to think about this for next year and say, okay, how do we pair, how do we package the league finals to have, like, you know, a hurling festival weekend where we play, I don't know, is it the Division 1A final coupled with the Division 2A final on the Saturday night, and then we have a triple header on the Sunday in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where we use Thurles and we try and nearly sell out 2 days in a row.
I think that'd be brilliant.
We give everybody the opportunity to play in one of the homes of hurling at all levels, and, you know, maximise the capacity and as well, or the attendances, to give players at all levels the opportunity to play in a really, really big game that's going to, you know, get some national coverage, because what we've seen after some of the finals last weekend was really disappointing. We can do better. But yes, Offaly they're riding the crest of a wave, and everybody will have looked at the dress rehearsal that we've seen in the last league fixture there between Offaly and Waterford and think, well, Waterford won by 8 points in the end. You know, they're significantly further down the track than this Offaly team. I I don't think so. You mentioned, James was sent off, I think it was after like 24, 25 minutes. So he played a lot of that game, 14 players. Brian Dignan's penalty was obviously tipped over the bar. He missed 3 or 4 frees that he hasn't missed all season. There's your 8 points immediately. And those 8 points were actually the last 8 points of the game. And Waterford are brilliant at that late kick. They've done it a few times in the league more recently as they've got their players back. Because that Spain, that Pronte, De Berga, Barron, with Stephen flying up front, Stephen Bennett flying up front again, that their spine is there again, and they are very strong. But Offaly won't fear this at all. Offaly were nobody's pick to be in the top final. In the final, it was Waterford Dublin all year long, and Offaly will travel in big numbers with great expectation. And I actually think this is going to be very tight. The way they play is fantastic. They counter-attack, and it is a counter-attacking game that they play. They drift back deep, and they come in swarms forward. A lot of it, and I think also one of the players we've talked about most over the last couple of years, Adam Screeney, hasn't played a minute. So he has to filter back into this summer. But the big one for me is Dan Burke at 11. Whenever he fills out physically, he will have the full package. He's 9/10 of the way there. He drops deep. He picks up so much ball. He uses the ball incredibly well. He can beat men. He can score. I love watching him play, and he makes Offaly tick. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in this game, because Tig de Berga likes to sit, obviously. So is somebody going to come back and pick him up, or is Paddy Levy going to come across and do a bit of a man-marking job on him? I don't know, but I can't wait to see how this unfolds. Offaly will bring the colour. Offaly are the 1B equivalent of Cork, put it like that, and travelling big numbers, bring great colour, and they're exciting to watch as well, with plenty of goals scored this year. So bring it on. It's going to be a brilliant 1B final too.
Yeah, it is, Ursula, because it has all the hallmarks of a tight game that could genuinely go either way.
Yeah, and I think there will be very little between the two sides, and it's a brilliant preparation for both Waterford and Offaly ahead of their Leinster and Munster Championship. Because remember, Waterford have Clare and Limerick at home in the opening 2 rounds of the Munster Championship. So if they could get a win on Sunday, it sets them up nicely with confidence, with momentum, going into playing two of their nearest and dearest rivals. And obviously they've done really well in Walsh Park, getting 3 victories down in Walsh Park already this year. So look, Waterford will be quietly confident going in. Obviously they had the opening round loss to Carlow, but I think they've progressed at a steady rate. They've got the guys back in, and I would have mentioned it, but Tig de Berga coming back in now, perfectly timed that he's back in. He's getting another 70 minutes under his belt ahead of Munster Championship, and that's so important, because I think when Tig is playing on this Waterford team, he brings in so many other players around him. He raises the standards of the players around him, because he's such an influential leader, and he's someone you want there in the heat of the battle, and he strengthens that spine so much. But Offaly, to me, they're a team that play with no fear. That's the way they've played at minor, at under 20, and these guys have filtered through as well, and they're going to be going into this final all out as well, because they've got Dublin in the opening round of the Leinster Championship, and I think we're in for a really competitive, probably the most competitive Leinster Championship this year, with the addition of Offaly, and I'm really looking forward to this game on Sunday, and I think there's going to be only a couple of points separating the two teams, really.
Yeah, look, it's going to be blood and thunder in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, that is for sure. We're looking forward to it. Rory, before we wrap up, obviously really sad news this morning with the passing of Mick O'Dwyer, and I know we're on a hurling podcast, but I think we're all GAA people, and everybody absolutely adored this man for what he gave to the whole legacy of the GAA. 4 All-Ireland titles as a player, 8 as a manager with Kerry before he even went anywhere else, spreading the good gospel. And I think just watching him around the place and his legacy on the game has been incredible. This is going to be some few days in terms of celebrating his life, isn't it?
Yeah, he 88, that's some innings, and just an incredible career as a player. Back in the 50s, won a rake of All-Ireland medals as a player, became Kerry manager, I think in 75. 74 was it?
75, yeah.
At a very young age, and ran into, you could call it luck, and don't give me a good general, give me a lucky one, that he happened to run into such an an incredible bunch of players as well. They went on this amazing journey themselves for nigh on 10 years. I think they played in 10 finals. They won 8. He nearly got Kildare to the promised land. He brought Laois to major success. He did a super job at Wicklow when he was involved. I mean, he had 2 spins, I think, with Kildare, and just like some contribution in so many different ways. Wasn't always the most popular fella in Cork, Jacqui. Well, you're the best. You're the second best team in Ireland now. You're the second best team in Ireland after a match. And like some of the Nemo lads would tell you that it wasn't the nicest thing to hear after you had your arse handed to you once again from Kerry in a Munster final. But just an incredible contribution to the GAA in an overall context, a true legend of the game, and he will. That'll be a big, big funeral down in Carsavine.
Ah, yeah, because Ursula, he travelled the whole length and breadth of the country, going to games, going to functions, meeting people. There wasn't a person in Ireland whose hand he probably didn't shake,
Yeah, well, I've a really great memory of him coming to our club for a medal night tour. I think it was our under 16 and minor hurlers, and my mum and dad obviously were over those teams, and someone from the club made contact with him to see would he come down to a hurling club to present medals, and without any hesitation, he was there. I think it was back in like 98, 99. So like we're talking about 30 years ago. But I'll never forget, I was probably 10 or 11 at that stage, and he was just such an infectious character. He was posing for pictures where everyone was obsessed with him. He gave so much time to all the young boys and girls there that night. He was giving them more attention and more notice than any adults there. And I just remember he was just such a character. He spoke to the guys as if he had watched them all that year. He was so motivating. And looking back at some of the pictures from that night, like he was just a great man, a legend, an icon. And, obviously sincere condolences to all his family, but his legacy will live on for many years to come.
Ah, yeah. Like even just listen to the stories even this morning, Neil. They're going to come from far and wide because he is that kind of character. You talked about culturally in Ireland, who we are and what we are. I think Mick O'Dwyer is the perfect representation of exactly what it means to be a Gaelic person in Ireland.
No doubt about it, Jacqui. I think we'll hear some brilliant stories over the next few days for sure. You're right about that. One springs to mind where he had Kerry on tour and they had stopped at Glenravel in County Antrim. There's still stories told about that. It might be 40 years ago now or 50 years ago actually. But look, he just gave all of himself to football, and he was in the greatest sense that those great Kerry GAA people have. There was a great bit of devilment, yeah, that's the word actually, Rory, involved in it all too, and just sincere condolences to his family and the parish and all of Kerry GAA.
Yeah, absolutely. May he rest in peace. I'm sure it'll be some celebration of a life well lived over the next few days.
That's it, Jacqui. You're right. A celebration of a life. Fantastic.
Yeah. We'll leave it there, lads. And look, hopefully it's a great weekend of football championship. That I'm sure Mick O'Dwyer would have some crack about the new rules and all that, watching them come into play in the championship this weekend. But also here's hoping we get 2 cracking hurling finals in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well in a sold out venue. It's going to be a magic summer. We're looking forward to it. To everybody, wherever you're going this weekend, enjoy the matches and we'll talk to you on Monday.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a